Yeah, good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Chief Meteorologist Chris Franklin, and we've been closely watching Invest 93 for what seems to be days now, and it is still an invest, basically a complex of tropical rains that have maybe the potential of doing something, whether or not that's getting better organized, becoming a depression or storm. Again, the classification of invest really doesn't change it from being just a tropical thunderstorm to anything organized. An invest classification just means that models are starting to be run specifically for those thunderstorms. And that's really the only difference between just some thunderstorms off in the Atlantic Gulf waters or being considered an invest. Usually it's an invest if there's going to be some interest with regards to organizing or if it's going to impact land. And obviously something like this is going to impact land. And it is still only being given a 40% chance of developing by the National Hurricane Center. Their thinking hasn't really changed. If there is going to be any organization, it's basically between now, where it's south of Pensacola, focus more on the X, not as much the invest. And even that is not much of a focus because there really is no center. What the Hurricane Center tries to do is find within all of the little spins within these thunderstorms a center that the models can be run off of. As there really isn't a well-defined center, the models tend to do a little bit poor of a job, at least in terms of the organization of the system, what it's going to look like as it moves closer to Louisiana. Now, this is our high-resolution infrared satellite because now we're losing the daylight imagery of our visible. But what this also is a high-res satellite. It's every minute it's updated. So this is actually in more real time than even our radar is. Difficult to see as there are some thunderstorms. Remember, that's not really here any longer. It's more south of Pensacola, Escambia Bay. So it's right about in through here. There may be some signs when we can see some of the low-level clouds of kind of a broad circulation. But we've also seen several little spins within all of these thunderstorms over the last several hours, going back to even earlier this morning. Now, in terms of where the more intense storms are, they're well removed from, okay, if this is the center, there are some new thunderstorms that are trying to fire up right near that, but all of the activity has been more over South Mississippi and starting to move toward Louisiana. Now, I just mentioned at the end of our 6:30 newscast, there is a severe thunderstorm warning for south of Pearlington. It really is for more marshy coastal areas, as it's even south of highways 90 and 190. But just within these thunderstorms, you got some heavy rainfall, and they are moving. This had started out over Biloxi, the Gulfport, and now Gulfport, more of a moderate to lighter rain as some of those heavier storms now approaching and moving through deeper into Diamond Head Bay, St. Louis. These will hold together if they continue kind of along this trajectory. Will take them toward parts of St. Tammany, and just kind of following the trajectory themselves may or may not even make it to the city. And if it does, again, if they hold together, it wouldn't be a little bit until the next couple of hours or so. And thankfully, while you get a brief heavy downpour, there's going to be some lightning with it, probably some gusty winds. They are moving. None of these storms so far are sitting. Kind of a light drizzly rain moving into the city now, as most of the day today was hot and relatively dry, and over the last several hours when we've started to get some of these showers and kind of a lighter rain moving over the coastal areas right now. These systems, these tropical kind of ever-evolving situations are sometimes very, very difficult for the forecast models to pinpoint exactly where storms are. Kind of picking up loosely on those heavier downpours now, and again may continue to see some of this activity over the next couple of hours, even going beyond midnight. So some brief downpours, bit of lightning, some gusty winds associated, but I think everything will be fairly manageable. Might get some street flooding, certainly some low-lying areas, and we know it doesn't take much for that. Then we get some breaks. Notice we kind of get the storms refiring up during the midday and afternoon hours tomorrow, and don't pay too much attention to precise times. What I'm trying to show you is more of the trend of storms in the coming days. We will see waves of these heavier showers. Then there will be periods of more light, moderate rainfall, or maybe no rain at all. Then we'll get another round of some heavy rainfall going into Friday. So through tonight, tomorrow, and Friday, we're going to see these rounds of storms rolling through. And that's really not even dependent upon how structurally sound this system is, which I think it's going to be very difficult for this to become a storm, let alone a depression, or to become a depression, let alone a storm, I should say. And by tomorrow noon, again, we're getting kind of new model runs in here, it should already be pushing into southeast Louisiana, whatever broad center or trough there is, continuing westward, eventually turning toward the north. It still draws moisture our way, so that's why rain chances will be on the higher side and rain accumulation totals are on the higher side. Now, the official totals kind of for the next 5 days, this is again over several days, 1 to 2 plus inches of rain along the north shore. Mississippi, maybe a little bit more, will increase those potential totals a bit more for the south shore. Quite a bit more, though, expected right along the coast, maybe lower bayou parishes, and even more south and around Lafayette. Now, that's kind of what we call the quantitative precipitation forecast. So it kind of looks at various models, but also humans will put that forecast together. This one is strictly based on a computer model. And again, 1 to 3 plus inches, certainly possible, with higher amounts down in the bayou parishes and along the coast. Just about in line with what our thinking is with regards to the eventual totals overall. Kind of going on the higher end of those numbers, 3 to 6 inches accumulation across a good portion of the area with some localized higher amounts. That is certainly possible. However, if an 8+ inch total ends up being over the marsh, who cares? If those 8 inches end up being over the city, then you've got some bigger issues. And where exactly those type of downpours could develop is impossible to say. And it's also impossible to say that they will develop. All we know is that there is certainly a possibility because we are drawing out from some very tropical moisture. So there is ample moisture available in the atmosphere for some heavy downpours. Now, through the night tonight, we're going to see some isolated downpours. Tomorrow, though, or excuse me, Thursday, I think I mixed my graphics up here. Well, I don't have my Thursday. Well, for tomorrow, I must have removed Thursday. We're all under this slight risk of some downpours. Friday, there's a little bit more of a greater risk as that system is kind of taking that turn toward the north for some very heavy rainfall to set up over Lafayette to Lake Charles, more southwestern Louisiana. And then we really start to see the threat becoming a bit more isolated in nature on Saturday. And our rain chances on Saturday will be coming down as well. So if that center is south of Pensacola, some of the nearby stations and buoys are only reporting 6 mile an hour, 8 mile an hour winds. Not even close to being that of a near depression. Now, you do find some stronger wind gusts because of those thunderstorms. You need a little bit closer to the center for this to become a well-defined system. And just based on what we've been seeing, I think that's going to be pretty difficult, again, considering the brief window it has to stay over those Gulf waters. Now, into tomorrow, we will see some wind gusts. Not a widespread issue, but certainly within the thunderstorms. And at times, we could see winds gusting up over 30+ miles an hour. That would be kind of where a tropical depression would be, but it wouldn't be a widespread. And even some wind gusts totaling up over 40 miles an hour. We've got that right now in Pearlington with a 60 mile an hour wind gust, or sustained winds, I should say. So these are the wind gusts expected. Gusting up to 20, 30 miles an hour at times within thunderstorms. I'm hoping damage is going to be fairly minimal, as this isn't really a wind event. It's going to be the rain event, and that still looks to be the case. As far as what has been going on with this system, there has been some very weak upper level shear from this upper high to the north of it. That has been keeping a lot of the thunderstorms disrupted away from that center. So as the thunderstorms try and get organized around that surface trough and then be able to kind of consolidate energy and become closed off, the wind shear tends to move the storms away. A lot of the storminess has actually been on more the western and southern side, which is atypical. Normally, it's the southern and eastern side of a tropical system. What actually is better for us. Not as good a news for the folks out to our west, and that may be why a lot of the modeling has been going a bit higher with the totals from Lafayette to Lake Charles. As far as the steering goes for the next day and a half, 2 days or so, you've got the high and an upper level low and our invest squeezed in between, which is why it will continue continue moving to the west. Eventually, the high starts to weaken and shift a little bit more to the east. This upper low starts getting lifted northward, and that's what also will help to turn the system toward the north and into the North Louisiana. So as far as the impacts go to us through tonight, into tomorrow and Friday, rounds of heavy rainfall, street flooding, and hopefully nothing more than just street flooding concerns. 3 to 6 inches, I think, is a probably safe bet on the high side for widespread totals. Isolated amounts higher are definitely possible. We see that all the time in just a typical summertime thunderstorm. What we need to do, again, by tomorrow, whatever is the center trying to develop, by about noon, mid-afternoon, is already moving inland. So then the time for trying to organize is done. We'll still have those tropical rains to contend with going into Friday, but in terms of trying to get a bit stronger, we'll be over. Pay attention to our streaming app. We'll be notifying you with updates and giving you these more detailed updates, even more so than we could do in a regular newscast. Plus, download the WWL app if any alerts are issued and are warranted. We're going to be closely watching. This is a pretty good, what looks to be more of a dry run, and hopefully the only tropical issues we have for the rest of the season. This one looks like it's really going to struggle to become maybe a depression, and even that is not looking very likely. And I think even less likely is this to become our next named storm. Again, a depression possibly, but again, by about midday tomorrow, it should already be inland. However, the heavier rains will still threaten through Friday. We'll be closely watching those over the coming days and update you accordingly. For now, I'm Chief Meteorologist Chris Franklin.